Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for biology. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. Now, if you don't already have this installed in your device, I would like you to download the app in order to follow along in this class. Now, ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams. Exams such as the UTME, the post-UTME, WAEC, GCE, IJMB, KCPE, JUPEB, Calbepedia. In the junior sections, we also have the BECE, we have the SSCE, and so much more. Now, you can download the app from www.examguide.com or you visit the Google Play Store to download. Now, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to update yourselves on new videos that will be coming up. Now, if you're ready for this class, let's get started. Today, we're going to continue another series in microorganisms, and the topic is microorganisms in action. Microorganisms in action. Now, in this particular topic, we will be talking about definition of growth of microorganisms. We're also going to be looking at factors that affect growth of microorganisms. We're also going to be talking about phases of growth in bacteria as a microorganism. We're going to be looking at harmless microorganisms, beneficial effects of microorganisms, harmful microorganisms and their effects. We're also going to be talking about we're going to be looking at some of the diseases caused by microorganisms, their mode of transmission, the organisms they transmit, and the disease they cause. We're going to be discussing most of this today. And by the end of this class, the specific objective we have is that by the end of this class, you should be able to define growth. You should be able to define growth. You should also be able, growth of microorganisms, and you should be also able to mention some of the factors that affect growth in microorganisms. You should also, number two, be able to outline ways of measuring growth in microorganisms. Number three, you should be able to tell us the phases or outline the phases of growth in bacteria. Number four, you should be able to describe what we call a harmless bacteria. Another name for this type of bacteria, we call them normal flora. And then we should be able to mention some of the beneficial effects as well as some of the harmful effects of microorganisms. And also you should be able to mention some plants and animal diseases that are caused by harmful microorganisms, and also mention some diseases, their causative organisms, mode of transmission, and the symptoms you can observe from these diseases. All right, now let's begin with the first one, which is called growth of microorganisms. Growth of microorganisms. Now, by definition, what is growth of microorganism? It involves an increase in the size of the population of microorganisms. Increase in the size of the population of microorganisms. In one of our classes where we talked about microorganisms around us, I told you that microorganisms can be grown in the laboratory. Now, what tells you that these microorganisms have undergone growth? It is based on the increase in the size of the population of the microorganisms. Now, please take note, most microorganisms reproduce asexually by binary fission. They reproduce asexually by binary fissions. Now, what are the factors that affect microbial growth? What are the factors that affect microbial growth? Now, we are looking at it in the light of mostly bacteria. Bacteria is one of the, one of the essential microorganisms scientists use for study in the laboratory. And we're looking at factors that affect its growth. Number one is availability of food. Availability of food. Number two is availability of space. The space is necessary for growth. If organisms are overcrowded, it will lead to death. We're going to still look at it. Another factor also that contributes to or affects growth is factors such as temperature. There must be a right temperature for it, mostly room temperature. We also have oxygen requirement. Remember, we have discussed about different types of bacteria based on their oxygen requirement. We have the ones that can do well in the presence of oxygen. We have the ones that can survive in the absence of oxygen. And we have the ones that can survive both in presence or absence of oxygen. We also have radiations. Radiations have effects in the growth of microorganisms, especially bacteria. Now let's look at the growth phase, stages of growth in bacteria as a microorganism. Stages of growth in bacteria as a microorganism. Now the first stage we're going to be looking at is the lag phase. The lag phase. We can call it the lagging phase. Now in this phase, growth in bacteria is usually slow. It's just beginning. It's actually slow. Now, the reason for this is that the microorganism, which is the bacteria, is taking its time to adjust to this new environment. It's taking time to adjust to the environment, get used to the environment. Then the second stage or phase is what we call the exponential phase, or you can call it exponential stage. Now, the first stage, we said the growth rate is slow. But in the second phase, the growth rate is fast and maximum. In fact, the growth rate of bacteria reaches its peak at the exponential phase. Now, the reason for this is the reason why this can happen, if there is suitable nutrients and other factors which are necessary for its growth to be rapid is in place. Now, factors like oxygen, if it is anaerobic bacteria, factors like food, space, and so on. So the bacteria experiences rapid growth. So the growth rate here is rapid or fast and also maximum. Number 3, which is the third stage, is the stationary stage or phase. The stationary stage or phase. Now, this is a stage or phase where the growth rate begins to slow down. The growth rate begins to slow down, and in some cases it stops. The growth rate slows down, and in some cases it stops. Now, the reason for this slowing down of growth and stopping of growth rate is because of the increase in population. Remember, at the exponential phase, there is a rapid increase in the size of the microorganisms or in the population of the microorganisms. But when it gets into the third phase, because of the increased population, growth rate will slow down. Now, the reason why the growth rate is slowing down based on population increase is because there will be increase in competition for food and space. Increase in competition for food and space. And then the fourth phase will come in, which is the death phase. Now, in this phase, the bacterial population begins to die. That is, the survival, the bacteria that actually survives is actually the fittest. Now, this happens because food is used up and waste products are being produced. Food is used up and waste products are being produced. So these are the 4 stages. We have the lag stage, the exponential stage, stationary, and death stage or phase. Now, moving to ways we can measure the growth of microorganisms. Now, in the laboratory, there are ways we measure the growth of microorganisms. Now, first one is by measuring turbidity. Now, this is how you measure actually the turbidity based on when you are using a liquid culture. If you're using a liquid culture like a broth, BROTH, using a broth, you measure the turbidity, because the more turbid that liquid broth or liquid culture is, the more microorganisms are present in it. That shows more growth. So if it becomes highly turbid, it means that growth rate is what? High. But if it is not so turbid, if it is a bit more transparent, it means that the growth of the microorganisms is not much. Okay, then the second way we can measure growth in microorganisms or microbial growth is by culturing samples of bacteria taken from a nutrient agar at regular intervals. So these are ways we can measure growth in microorganisms. Now, the next thing to take note of is what we call harmless microorganisms. There are some microorganisms that are harmless microorganisms. These microorganisms, some of them are called normal floras. They are microorganisms which occur naturally in your body and they do not cause harm at that moment to your body. These normal floras are made up of bacteria, they are made up of fungi, some are and also made up of protozoa. So we have bacteria, fungi, and then what? Protozoa. They come together to make up what we call normal flora. Now, these normal floras or harmless microorganisms are useful and they have symbiotic relationship with humans or with man, all right? An example is the gut flora found in the guts of man. Now, which can help to break down carbohydrates that we cannot digest ourselves. There are some complex carbohydrates like starch that we can't digest ourselves. These gut floras help in the digestion of these complex carbohydrates. Now, beneficial effects. We have so many beneficial effects of microorganisms. Microorganisms, like we said before, some are beneficial, and I also told you that some are harmful. Now, looking at beneficial effects of microorganisms, one of them is maintaining of soil fertility. Microorganisms can help to maintain soil fertility, and they do this through the process of decomposition. The activities of most saprophytic microorganisms convert dead parts of organisms into useful materials which are called humus, and they are used by plants. So they help to improve what? Soil or maintain soil fertility. Number two is recycling of nutrients in an ecosystem. If you go through the nitrogen cycling, in nitrogen cycling, you'll find out that bacteria or microorganisms play major role, mostly in terms of nitrogen fixation, in terms of denitrification, in terms of nitrification, ammonification. All these processes in nitrogen cycle is played by microorganisms. So microorganisms, to a large extent, helps in the recycling of certain nutrients in the ecosystem. Number three is sewage disposal or treatment. Sewage disposal or treatment. Now, some saprophytic microorganisms have the ability to decompose sewage. They have the ability to decompose sewage into harmless inorganic compounds. Now, in this process, most of the pathogens are also killed because they are outcompeted by the saprophytes. So pathogenic microorganisms are killed in the process. In the same way, this waste or sewage are being treated and also effectively disposed. Also, another beneficial effect of microorganisms is in food industries. Microorganisms are used in food industries, so many. They are used to produce what we call the single-cell proteins. They can be used to make cheese and yogurt. They can be used to carry out fermentation. Mostly an example is yeast. They can also be used for food as food additives for baking. Just like we just said, an example is the yeast. So the microorganism can be used in food industries. Also, microorganisms can be used in chemical industries. Examples of microorganisms, examples of the important substance that are being produced in industries based on the involvement of microorganisms include citric acid, we have the dextrans, we have cellulose. They are all produced in chemical industries with the help of microorganisms. Also, microorganisms are beneficial in medicine. Some microorganisms can be used to produce antibiotics. Yes, they are used also for producing vaccines and other drugs. Like we have the penicillin. The penicillin is an antibiotic that is gotten from the microorganism Penicillium. Okay, so you can see that most vaccines and most antibiotics are gotten from the study of microorganisms or even microorganisms themselves. Okay, so it helps in medicine. It helps in medicine. Then number 7, it also helps to control pests. It helps in controlling pests biologically. Helps in controlling pests biologically. Another one, number 8, is that microorganisms helps in biodegradation of pollutants. Biodegradation of pollutants. Now, scientists have produced petroleum digesting bacteria. Petroleum digesting bacteria, which are harmful, which are useful in getting rid of oil spills in the sea quickly. They are used for getting rid of oil spills in the seas quickly. Now, quickly, let's talk about harmful effects of microorganisms. I said to you that microorganisms are beneficial. We have looked at some beneficial effects. Microorganisms are also harmful. Now, one of the harmful effects of microorganisms is that they cause food spoilage. They lead to food spoilage by causing decomposition. Number 2 is that they cause deterioration of materials. Deterioration of materials like wood, we have cotton, leather, paper, and so on. They cause deterioration of materials. Number 3 is that they can cause diseases. We're going to be looking at a lot of diseases caused by microorganisms, either in plants as well as also in animals. Also, microorganisms can cause the death of organisms, of other organisms like plants and animals. So these are some of the harmful effects of microorganisms. They can lead to death. All right? Now, some diseases caused by microorganisms. We're going to be looking at diseases caused by virus, both animal diseases and plant diseases. Now, in terms of animal diseases caused by virus, we have examples like the poliomyelitis. Poliomyelitis, we have the hepatitis, it's caused by a virus. Measles are also caused by virus. We have common cold, it's caused by virus. Smallpox, in fact, all the pox, smallpox, monkeypox, cowpox, chickenpox, they are all caused by virus. We also have yellow fever. It is caused by a virus. Influenza is caused by a virus. Newcastle disease in most animals is caused by virus. AIDS, that is acquired immune deficiency syndrome, is caused by a virus. Now let's take a look at that in plants. In plants, we have diseases that are caused by virus. We have cassava mosaic, we have maize streak, we have yam mosaic, we have leaf curl, we have swollen shoot diseases, we have rosette diseases, and so on. These are some of the diseases that are caused by virus in plants. Now, we also have diseases that are caused by bacteria. Diseases caused by bacteria. We're going to look at the ones caused by bacteria in animal and also in plants. Now, in animal, we have diseases like leprosy, we have the tuberculosis, we have the tetanus, we have the typhoid fever, we have dysentery, we have cholera, we have pneumonia, sore throat, syphilis, boils, meningitis, gonorrhea, whooping cough, and so on. These are diseases caused by bacteria in animals. In plants, we have diseases like the onion rot, we have the tomato rot, we have the black arm, we have the cassava wilt, we have the leaf blight of cassava, we have the yam rot, and so many others. These are the diseases caused by bacteria in plants. Now, also, we have diseases caused by fungi. Diseases caused by fungi. In animals, the diseases include ringworm, we have aspergillosis, we have athletic foot, we have the thrush, and so on. And then also in plants, we have maize smut, we have rice blight, we have cocoa black pod, we have coffee leaf rust, we have the black spot, we have the citrus scab, and so on. Now, please take note, these are very important. In some WAEC questions, even in JAMB questions, they ask these questions regularly when looking at microorganisms in action. And as time goes on, we're going to be seeing some of these questions as it is being presented in external exams. Next, number 4 is diseases caused by protozoa. Now, we're going to be looking at only animal diseases caused by protozoa. An example is the trypanosome. We've talked about this before. We said the sessafly is a vector, but trypanosome is a protozoa. Even the one that causes malaria. Malaria is caused by a protozoa, not a bacteria. Bacteria does not cause malaria. It is protozoa called Plasmodium that causes malaria. We have the red water disease, we have the coccidiosis, and so on. Now, quickly, some diseases, they are causative agents or organisms, and to an extent, their mode of transmission. We're going to be looking at it. But in this category, we're going to be looking at food and waterborne diseases. We're going to be talking about airborne diseases. We're going to be looking at diseases caused by vectors and diseases caused by sexual contact. I repeat, food and waterborne diseases. We're also going to be looking at airborne diseases. We're going to be talking about diseases caused by vectors and then diseases caused by sexual contact. Now, let's start with food and waterborne diseases. Food and waterborne diseases. Number 1 disease, we're going to be looking at just very few of them. There are so many. But let's take a look at typhoid fever. Now, typhoid fever is caused by a bacteria. Please take note. It's caused by a bacteria. And the bacteria that causes typhoid fever is Salmonella typhi. Now, the mode of transmission is usually food and water. Next on the line is cholera. Cholera is also another disease. Now, what causes cholera is also a bacteria, and it is called Vibrio cholerae. Vibrio cholerae causes cholera. And of course, the mode of transmission is also water and food. And then we also have another one which is called poliomyelitis. Poliomyelitis, another name for poliomyelitis is infant paralysis. The causative organism is a virus. Of course, the mode of transmission is also food and water. Now, moving ahead, let's take a look at airborne diseases. Remember, these air, food, and water, we call them agents or carriers of microorganisms. So they serve as agents, all right? Now, with first one on the line is tuberculosis. Now, the causative agent or causative organism or the organism that causes tuberculosis is what we call Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It is a bacteria, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now, the mode of transmission is air, and that is why when you are coughing, make sure you cover your mouth, or even when sneezing, make sure you cover your nose and you cover your mouth. So tuberculosis can be transmitted through air. Next is chickenpox. Chickenpox. The causative organism for chickenpox is also a virus. Virus causes chickenpox. Remember, I told you that all pox, all diseased pox, is caused by a virus. We also have meningitis. Another name for meningitis is cerebrospinal fever. Cerebrospinal fever. It is caused by a bacteria which is called meningococcus. Meningococcus causes meningitis or cerebrospinal fever. Now let's move to diseases caused by vectors. I have also discussed this earlier on, diseases caused by vectors. Now, the diseases caused by vectors, we have one called river blindness. River blindness. Now, river blindness doesn't mean you won't see rivers again. You won't have the ability to view rivers. No, it simply means that the organism that transmits the disease is found in riverine areas. Okay? Now, the causative organism is called protozoa. It's a protozoa that causes river blindness. But the mode of transmission, the vector that transmits river blindness that transmits the protozoa is called black fly. It's the black fly. Next is yellow fever. Yellow fever. Yellow fever is caused by a virus. Caused by a virus, not a bacteria. Yellow fever is caused by a virus, and the mode of transmission is a vector called Aedes mosquito. Aedes mosquito. And then also we have the sleeping sickness. It's also another disease. It is caused by an organism called trypanosome. Trypanosome. Another name for sleeping sickness is trypanosomiasis, or you can call it Nagana. Now, the mode of transmission is actually a vector called tsetsefly. Tsetsefly transmits the disease or transmits the microorganism called trypanosome, which then causes the disease sleeping sickness. And then also we have diseases caused by sexual contact. Diseases caused by sexual contact. We have the one called gonorrhea, and the causative organism of gonorrhea is Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Neisseria gonorrhoeae. It is a bacteria that causes gonorrhea. All right? And the mode of transmission is by sexual contact. And then we also have the AIDS, which is the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The causative organism is the HIV, which is the human immunovirus that causes AIDS. Okay? And the mode of transmission is also by sexual contact. And then finally, we have syphilis. Syphilis. The causative organism for syphilis is Treponema pallidum. Treponema pallidum is a bacteria that causes syphilis. Also, the mode of transmission is sexual contact. And this brings us to the end of this particular class in microorganisms in action. But before we go, let's take a look at some few questions using our ExamGuide app. We have a lot of questions here, about 28 in number. We're going to pick very few of them, and with time you practice on your own. Okay? Let's take a look at question 3. An example of a parasitic protozoa. Parasitic protozoa is A, is it Plasmodium? B, is it Chlamydomonas? C, is it Euglena? D, is it Paramecium? Now, Paramecium is not parasitic. Euglena is not parasitic. They are all free-living. Chlamydomonas is also not parasitic, it's free-living. And Chlamydomonas is not a protozoa, but a protista. Sorry, a protophyta, rather. The correct answer is A, Plasmodium, which is a parasitic protozoa. Now, moving to the next. Which ecological condition favors the breeding of black flies? Remember, I just said something about river blindness. Black flies. A, is it fast-flowing streams? B, is it stagnant lakes? C, is it water in ponds and swamps? And D, is it freshwater habitat? And I think the correct answer is C, water in ponds and swamps. That helps in the breeding of black flies. Then we also have which of the following is true of smallpox? Which of the following is true of smallpox? A, it can effectively be controlled with antibiotics. B, it can effectively be controlled by vaccination. C, it is transmitted by bacteria. D, it is a waterborne disease. Now, options C and D are out of the question. Smallpox is not transmitted by bacteria, rather is by a virus. Then D, they said there it is a waterborne disease. No, smallpox is actually an airborne disease. So we're left with option A and B. Now option A said, can it be treated using an antibiotics? No, antibiotics are mainly effective on bacteria. So the correct answer is by vaccination. So the answer there is B. Now let's take the last question here, which is cerebrospinal meningitis. I made mention of it, one of the diseases. Cerebrospinal meningitis is caused by is it Salmonella typhi or species? Remember we said Salmonella species causes what we call typhoid fever, and that is not true. Option B is Treponema species. Treponema pallidum causes syphilis, so it is not correct. Option C said Vibrio species. Vibrio cholerae causes cholera. The correct option is Meningococcus species. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using your ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn particular topics of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and even practice mode. It also has other features that makes learning very fun. Now, it is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to your loved ones and friends that will benefit from it. Bye for now.